Hello and welcome to the Japan Zoomina at UC San Diego. It's May 11th in California, May 12th, 2021 in Tokyo. Ohayo gozaimasu. I'm Ulrike Schede. I'm the professor of Japanese business at UC San Diego and the director of JFIT. JFIT is the Japan Forum for Innovation and Technology at UCSD, and we are at GPS, the School of Global Policy and Strategy. This is an international relations and public policy school. It had one of our foci is the Pacific Rim, and we offer a Master's of International Affairs with a Japan specialization, in addition to a China specialization and many other PAC-Rim areas. So if you're interested in our program offerings, please go to gps.ucsd.edu. And information on JFIT is at jfit.ucsd.edu. If you go to that JFIT website, you can see in the banner a number of tabs. One is called News and Media, where you can sign up for our San Diego Japan Newsflash, a bi-weekly news about Japan. We pick topics that you cannot read in the normal media normally. Right next to it is the Japan Zoomina tab, where you can sign up for upcoming events and find the recordings of our past events. If that's all too difficult, you can also go to my website, thejapanologist.com. The Japan Zoomina is a weekly event. We meet every Tuesday at 4:30, which during the summer month is 8:30 on Wednesdays in Tokyo. And today, of course, we're going to talk about the future of Japan after COVID. Let me just highlight a few upcoming events. Next week, I'll have Shel Guerin from Princeton, a historian who will look at Japan through the transnational lens, followed by Maurice Alice Haddad on environmental advocacy in East Asia, and Ivan Burkowski, who will talk about e-commerce and the digital transformation in Japan. And you can see here after that, we're going to do entrepreneurship, and then we're going to do IPE again, so international political economy with Maria Solis. So all of that is on our website, jfit.ucsd.edu/Zoomina. Alrighty then, without further ado, let me introduce our guest today, and there she is, Dr. Yuri Okina. Welcome, Dr. Okina. It's great to have you on the show. Ohayo gozaimasu. So let me introduce you briefly. Dr. Okina has a MA degree from Keio University and a PhD from Kyoto in economics, Kyoto University. She started her career at the Bank of Japan, where in fact we first met. Shall we tell them when that was? Maybe not, better not. And then you joined the Japan Research Institute, which is the Nihon Sogo Kenkyujo. And you made it all the way up and are now the chairperson of JRI. You've written many books, 6 in fact. I have one here on the blockchain. And that is one that we wrote several years ago about how the digital transformation is going to affect fintech and logistics and manufacturing. You have also a number of papers. You are a director of NIRA, the National Institute of Research Advancement in Japan. You are an outside board member in several companies. And you were, of course, also in the past as a visitor to our Center on Global Transformation here in San Diego. So that was a great time. You've been nominated on many committees, Shingikai, Deliberation Council, task forces, mostly on finance, like tax reform, pension, corporate governance, management related. And you've also served as a board member on the IRCJ, which was the Sangyo. Sorry about that. Should prepare that better. And then ETIC, which was the follower to IRCJ. Both of those were very important institutions in the late 90s, early 2000s to show that bankruptcy law can be implemented in Japan, even though there is this thicket of main bank systems and keiretsu and all of that. So today you're the chairperson of JRI, and you are the chairwoman, we would say, I guess, or the chair of Prime Minister Suga's task force on charting the future for Japan after COVID. And in that function, we have you here today. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. And by the way, Ulrike, congratulations. Your book, Business Reinvention of Japan,
this one.
just won the Masayoshi Ohira Memorial Prize for Best English Book on furthering our understanding of the Pacific Rim. So congratulations.
Thank you so much for saying that, Yuri. Thank you. It's wonderful. And that gives me an opportunity actually to thank everybody who's on the show today for your help. And you in particular, you've been a dear friend, a co-author, a colleague. You have taught me a lot about Japan. So and so let me just include everybody in my thanks. This is wonderful. So thank you. So let's go to the future. So what's the? Can you tell us a little bit about the task force? I think you maybe brought some slides.
Yes. Okay. So I'd like to make just a 10 minutes introduction about the choosing the future committee. So let me share the slides. Yes.
Yes, that's great.
Yeah. Okay. So you introduced the choosing the future committee for the first time, but this is just the Nishimura Daijin's committee, not Suga-san directly. So in 2015, choosing the future committee 1.0 proposed that Japan had to make a jump start by 2020 to accomplish the 3 challenges to reverse the trend of declining birth rate, to increase the productivity, and to revitalize the region and correct the concentration of Japan's population in Tokyo. Choosing the Future Committee 2.0 has started its activity last spring just for check how well these challenges have achieved. We published the interim report last summer, and we are now preparing to publish the final report. Today, I will talk about this topic based on the interim report. 2.0 committee is composed of 12 members, professors specializing in economics, law, AI, and so on, business chief executive officers of such as DNA or Manex, and so on, or journalists, mainly in 40s to 50s, and the ratio of women is 40%. And we made a conclusion in the report that the expected jumpstart by the early 2020s has not been successful. The Abe administration that started at the end of 2012 and ended in September last year attempted to reform regulatory environment, social security system, or labor policies, but many of these efforts have been yet to yield results. So let me see the 3 charts. In the left side, the most serious problem facing Japan is declining fertility rate, birth rate, which has not improved. While the Abe administration set a target fertility rate of 1.80, the actual fertility rate has remained low, dropping to 1.36 in 2019. The figure is likely to decline further due to COVID-19. And the center chart is the potential GDP growth rate in Japan. The black line is estimated to remain below 1%. And the yellow bars, productivity has been flat or just a little bit declining. And the right side, this is the share of the population in Tokyo. This has been increasing steadily until 2019. This trend is starting to change last year. And it is under these circumstances that the COVID-19 pandemic has spread. Towards the end of Abe administration, as COVID-19 infection spread, remote work and online education became more widespread, the lives of many Japanese people underwent a dramatic transformation. According to the survey conducted by the Cabinet Office in June last year, many people came to realize that work-life balance and family are very important. And people also realized that Japan lags behind in digitalization. And now there is a momentum to change the lifestyle and produce a digital transformation of society. And this is a Cabinet Office survey. One of the charts I will show that in the left side, it shows that changes in time spent with families in households raising children under COVID-19, and 70.3% of households raising children spend more time with their families, of which 81.9% want to keep the current situation in the future. This survey was done in last June. And the right side is efforts of sharing the roles of housework under COVID and the child care under COVID-19. And 34.1% of households raising children have tried to make more efforts in sharing tasks for housework and child care, of which 95.3% want to continue such efforts in the future. So COVID-19, this is just a simple example of the survey, but COVID-19 is rapidly reshaping people's attitudes about all aspects of life and life ranging from work to family. So our committee recommended in interim report last July that Japan must not miss this critical opportunity to realize real reform. And we especially emphasize that diversity is very important for Japan's future, because only when diversity is secured, innovation can be born, resilience can be ensured. To that end, it is necessary to allow diverse ways of living and working. As for increasing the productivity, we said that digital transformation should be accelerated in Japan, and investing in human resources are the basis for increasing the value-added productivity. Let me see the charts that the left side is the rate of individuals using e-government services, and Japan lags behind compared with the OECD countries. And the right side is the investment in intangible assets percentage of GDP, and Japan is a red line and just a little bit lags compared with the United States or United Kingdom, France, and so on. So Prime Minister Suga said that the establishment of a digital agency and the advancement of regulatory reforms would be the most important policy issues for his administration. I think that the government must not only promote digitalization of the government itself, but accelerate the move towards online services in fields such as education, medicine, and the private sector more generally. Over the next few years, companies must use digitalization to adapt their business model to the challenges presented by the pandemic. This will hopefully raise the potential growth rate. And as for the revitalization of the regional areas, the flow of people from Tokyo to local areas are increasing since COVID-19 has spread. In addition to high health consciousness, remote work has become more widespread. Commuting time has begun to become painful, and young people are thinking about moving to rural areas. The land price of Sapporo, Fukuoka, or Sendai has begun to rise since last year. And this is the same Cabinet Office survey the left side is shows that more than 70% of those who have reduced commuting time want to keep it in the future. And the right side is a change in the hope of migration to rural areas of young people. And about 35.4% of the young people are more interested in migration to rural areas. So we emphasize that in order to revitalize each region, while promoting digitalization, local governments, regional banks, companies, and local universities should create an ecosystem, not just people, and enhance the attractiveness that makes the best use of characteristics of each region. In the last theme, the declining birth rate is most serious and difficult problem for Japan. Birth rates are expected to fall further in pandemic. Not only the government, but also private companies and society should change the mindset. When Prime Minister Abe-san worked towards reforming ways of working and the establishment of free nurseries for children, these policies saw limited success. And Suga-san, Prime Minister Suga, decided that in addition to expanding health insurance to cover treatment for infertility, more nurseries will be established. In addition to these efforts, measures to balance work and childcare, such as raising the rate of taking parental leave for fathers, currently only at 7.48%, will be essential. In Japan, awareness of gender roles is deep-rooted. We now should change this mindset. It is necessary to create a society in which both men and women can achieve a work-life balance. Now, due to the influence of COVID-19, non-regular employees and women are greatly affected in Japan as well. And we think that it is also important to correct the seniority basis wage or seniority basis promotion, build the social bridge type safety net, and create a society where young people can feel confident and secure with small disparities. Thank you. This is my just presentation.
That's great. Thank you so much. So yeah, there you are. Great. So let's talk to some of these options. And audience, I have prepared some questions, but after I've gone through my 3 or 4 pre-prepared ones, I'll be happy to read out your questions if you type them into the Q&A. And if you don't, I will only refer to you by your first name to protect your privacy. And if you don't get called out today, we will look at your question later. So Okina Sensei, let me start with a little bit of a direct and nasty question. Let me be my German self. You know, I'm reminded of Professor Curtis, who once referred to Japan as a joke, as a NATO country, no action talk only. And so the question I have for you is, we have another committee, and for some people it may feel as it was yet another committee drafting the future. And what are the actual action points here? And it's a little bit unfair to you since you're the head of the task force, not a politician, but is this another sort of exercise of writing a report, or what's the actual practical relevance of this work that you're doing?
Thank you. Yes, I think that Ms. Kaji's essays is very true in Japan, I think so. And this committee was originally created to check government policy and actions. Therefore, although it is established in the Cabinet Office, but it objectively verifies policy with data at a certain distance from the government and proposes necessary policies based on the data analysis. So we recommend setting a benchmark and verifying the proposed policies on a regular basis, such as every 5 years or so. So some request of the interim report was reflected in the economic and fiscal plan for 2020, so-called Honebuto no Hoshin. But there are also politically difficult policy issues. So, however, we want the government to proceed with the policy while firmly evaluating the policy and based on the data and the evidence. So this is my answer.
So, so you mentioned in your talk, so that's great, right? So in a way, it's not clear whether you have a lot of power, but you can create a little bit of noise, right? So, so you mentioned though that the version 1.0 of
Yes.
this report, there was a jump start that was supposed to jumpstart and it didn't jumpstart. What happened there?
Yes, I think that one of the reasons is the progress of regulatory reform was insufficient. The real reason of the insufficient regulatory reforms is a series of barriers presented by vested interests. For example, the Abe administration announced that the digitalization of medical care should increase the productivity and effectiveness of Japan's medical services. But online medical care has become widely used only after the government permitted it as a special case due to COVID-19. So both the group of doctors or medical doctors or a group of pharmacists are very powerful and conservative. And the other reason is that the policy evaluation system is not working. For example, the government implemented various policies against declining birth rate, as I said, that reforming ways of working or establishment of free nurseries for children. But these policies saw limited success. So I think that we need for a process of assessing and modifying the effectiveness of policies based on data. Especially in Japan, economists have recognized that EBPM, evidence-based policymaking, is important in recent years. And an interim report pointed out that it is very important to include a process of policy evaluation and revision based on these evidence.
So that's great. Right? So so there's a shift towards pushing to action. And at some point there will be some accountability, because if we're all creating all of these reports and you know, nothing happens, then clearly something is broken. And yet on the ground, there are these, we hear these stories, right? So the hanko,
Yes.
there's still the paper culture. I'm always thinking that Japan is the kamimo oi, right? So lots of paper and lots of kami-sama. But it's also paper, right? And paper is important, and people like tangible things to show and prove, and so sometimes it's not just the regulation, it's also the mindset that has to change, right? Yes. So do you have any thoughts on so there's the implementation, and then there's the, okay, so how do we change the use of things, right? Has the committee looked at that at all? Is that an implementation challenge?
We just want to, our committee just want to check the how the deregulation is going in 5 years or such like that. But I think that Kono Daijin is a you know, he is in charge of Kisei Kaikaku, deregulation, is a very aggressive and just to tackle with the Hanko Bunka last year, and this is a kind of the success, and not only from the government side but also the private side, and the mindset is just a little bit changing under the COVID-19.
Yeah, so this COVID-19 shock may be interesting in the future. Right? Let's talk about women a little bit, because this is, of course, one of our favorite topics. Most of your presentation was about women, so fertility rate, household, going back to work. So how has the committee evaluated the gender gap? What are the problems there?
Can I share the slides? Okay.
Yeah, sure, sure.
Yes, Japan's gender gap index is still at the 120th place in the world this year, which is very low. Especially it is low in the political and the business fields. As is a well-known figure, the ratio of female managers in particularly low in South Korea and Japan. This is a left side chart. And it is also well known that the number of women majoring in science or mathematics at university called Rikejo, Rikejo is low compared with the OECD countries. After all, I think we think that the seniority system in Japan and the structure of male-centered company and labor practice such as long working hours are major problems. Since the Abe administration, the employment of women has progressed. The so-called M-shaped curve, this is the right side, curve has improved considerably. And the women have continued to work while raising children. However, our committee pointed out that the problem with the L-shaped curve, this red line, and the number of female regular employees is the highest in the 20s and then declines. This indicates that when a woman gives birth to a child, she cannot continue to be a regular employee and is quitting and moving to a part-time non-regular employees. This seems to force women in their late 20s to 30s to choose whether to have another child or to continue the hard work of long working hours. So the problems needs to be solved from various angles. First, there is a move to revise the corporate governance code. Respecting diversity by Japanese companies is an important issue for increasing corporate value in the future, and it is expected to communicate with investors about this. Also, as I mentioned, it is very important to change the persistent consciousness of gender roles in society as a whole. So there are so many points that we want to emphasize that, but there are so many issues to be solved in this field, I think.
So, so one of the problems I see also is, so we know that in many countries, Japan is not an exception, that women quit the workforce when they have young children and then they re-enter. And in Japan, there's long been a practice, Germany actually, a similar thing, where when they re-enter on what in Japan is called part-time, even though it's not part-time at all. It could be the same hours. It could be part-time, but it could be the same hours. And I think the problem that this causes is that men, the male workers, the male employees, develop a certain image of the role of women in the workforce. Right, women in the workforce are part-timers, and they do these jobs, and they make the coffee, and they make the copies, and they do these things that are support roles. And then when women actually stay in the workforce and are not part-timers, they often have to fight this unconscious bias that the male employees have, and we can't really blame them, because how are they supposed to know? But there's this shift that has to happen, that women can be just as powerful as men, and this unconscious bias plays out in a number of different interesting and harmful ways. For instance, not giving women demanding assignments, or is making assumptions about their availabilities, and so forth and so on. Although I have to say, I'd like to hear your personal opinion on this, but I think over the last 30 years, this has changed quite a bit.
Yes.
Don't you think?
Yes, I think that unconscious bias has been changing for these 20 years. I think so, and I think that many companies think that the women workforce is very, very important. Not only just a workforce, but they are very, the diversity itself is very important for the management side, because I said that, there are so many risks in the world. So the resilience itself is very important. When the diversity is secured, the resilience is just a little bit secured. If the only the man-centered company is very fragile, I think. And also the innovation itself is, is very, the factor of the diversity is very important. So
yeah, so we have research that shows that, right? That diverse teams are more creative.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that COVID-19 is something like just a little bit of shock, that the resilience is very important and sustainability is very important. So I think so many CEOs have to change the mindset more and more in the future, I think.
I'm not sure it's the CEOs that I'm worried about so much as some of the middle managers that
Yes.
have unconscious biases, right? So there's that. But it is changing. So we should give credit where credit is due, as much as there are problems.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that on the women topic, that if you want to stop that and people can see you maybe a little better, you want to stop your share?
Okay.
Maybe? Yeah. So I mean, the other thing that I think that bothers me a little bit on the women debate is that people often say there are no powerful women in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And I always immediately think of you. Because you're the chairperson of the second largest research institute or the largest in Japan, right? So, and so I find comments like that a little bit, that's just not true. There are a lot of powerful women in Japan, but they're just not as visible, maybe, and they're not as many as elsewhere. And I think they also display their power in a little bit different ways.
Yeah.
Right? In a more quiet way, maybe. So we need to maybe adjust our lens a little bit to see really what kind of change is happening. What do you think about
that? I think that the business, in the business field, the 男女共同参
equal opportunity
yes.
law, yeah.
The law was acted for maybe 20 years ago or so. So many managers are just increasing in the just reaching the directors or just in the sikoyaku in these days. So maybe in 10 years, that the managers of the business field is just a little bit changing, I think. But in the political field, there are so few politicians in Jiminto or other Rikkinminshito or Kokuminminshito. This is a very big problem for Japan, because politicians is very powerful, and just they have the power to change the Japan. So I think it is most important issue is not only the business field but also the political field.
So we have a question from Cashin who wants to know whether the Japanese government is setting any incentives for young couples to have more children. Right. So in Germany, for instance, there's a tax thing. I think there's a tax thing here. What is the situation in Japan about incentivizing the fertility rate to go up? And
incentivization is not so big, but I think that one of the issue is free education and free nurseries that the Abe administration did for a few years ago. And this is a kind of the very incentivization for the children. And and also, yes, they not incentive, but also the Abe-san's did that. He built so many nurseries for the nurseries in Japan, and also, yeah, incentivization and yes. Only I think that the free education and free nurseries, I think
that's the main thing. So maybe that's a good idea that was just proposed here. You could look into, I mean, some of the things that would make it easier. You know, there's always a soft side. You know, no matter what the regulation is. I know of a dear colleague who, the moment she had a child, it was assumed that, you know, she had to go home at 5, so she was moved into another part of the company where that was not considered as important, where she could leave, and she was actually quite upset about that, right? So why am I suddenly, I'm not ill, I'm not sick, you know, I just had a child, so why are you doing this to me? And
I think that the parental leave is a very beneficial for the parents, young couples, because compared with the other countries, because they secure the 80% or just a little bit, but they secure the income for young couples.
Yeah, but isn't the problem with the maternity leave, or actually the paternity leave, the career damage? I mean, this is true in the US, right? So this is not Japan specific. I mean, the problem in large companies in the US or Europe is that if you're out for half a year, you may miss out on the rotation. And that may have severe career impact, which is why so few men take it extendedly. So they now take, I know a number, you know, they take 2 weeks or 4 weeks, which is new, and that's a good start. But I haven't met a Japanese man who took a half a year paternity leave, right? Because in fact, I know a number of women in Japan that are a little bit upset. It is so long, right? So Abe Prime Minister is like 3 years or something.
Oh, incredible.
Yeah, and it's like, that's too long. I mean, who wants to be away from the work for 3 years, right?
No.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not good for the career, right? So that's there are a lot of dicey things there. And there's also, of course, a whole thing about education. We have one more question actually from Regis on this matter, and then we move on. And he says that there are the opinion is there are plenty of powerful Japanese women, but very few with a lot of children. And so there are very few role models of women in leadership positions that have children. And would it help to play those up, right, to make those more of an example, and highlight that yes, you can raise a child and be, you know, the chairperson of JRI, or you know, something like that, and maybe, and I think that's another good idea, right, to highlight that both are possible, and that there's a lack of role modeling for that kind of that type of work-life balance.
Right? Yes, I think so too. Yeah.
Yeah. So when we talk about women, a lot of people also want to talk about immigration. And it's often used together, which is interesting to me, because I think people think about women in the workforce like an economic unit, right? So you were very careful not to do that. You were talking about women entering the workforce because of diversity and because it's the right thing. But a lot of people who look at the economics of it think that the impending labor shortage due to the shrinking society can be addressed in two ways. I would say three ways. One is the digital transformation. We use robots. The second is entice women into the workforce, which is happening. And the third, of course, is to allow for more immigration. Is your committee looking at that? Your task force looking at that at all?
Yes. Yes. It is expected that increase in foreign workers due to the revision of the immigration law implemented by the Abe administration will contribute to the potential growth rate. And Japan created a special skilled workers visa, a new class of working visa for foreign laborers. It enables foreign workers with certain skills to work in labor fields in 14 select industries, including healthcare and agriculture. Japan had only opened the door for the technical interim trainees for international cooperation activities for a long time. This division is a major transformation of Japan's immigration policy. So Japan has been very conservative about immigrants for many years. However, we think that this itself should be revised from the perspective of respect for diversity. Currently, so the unemployment rate of non-regulated workers is rising under COVID-19. So it is not so much mentioned in this report. But as the shortage of labor will become apparent, considering the decrease of the working age population in Japan, and it's expected that foreigners will work in various fields. So we did not so much mention about this, but we emphasize that we must the country very attractive, so that the highly skilled human resources, not only the highly skilled, but also the foreigners overseas can gather to Japan. So it is a, it's a not so directly, but it's a indirect, the affirmative opinion to the immigration, I think.
So Arthur has a good question that I'm just gonna jump on here, which is, so immigration, so policies are a country's choice, and so they're what they are. But then there's also the reality of integrating immigrants into society, which is, again, it's more the implementation, right? So the policy is one thing, and then the implementation and changing the mindset and society is the second thing. What are your thoughts on that, either as a task force member or just as a Japanese who's concerned about the country, right?
Yeah, for myself, I think that the Japanese mindset is very conservative about the immigrants for many long years. But there are some areas in Hamamatsu or some areas that are very, so many foreigners are living with the Japanese people, and they just want to coexist cordially for each other. And as you know, that so many companies like convenience stores are using a very skilled good foreigners for the very powerful workforce for their companies. So gradually, I think that the mindset of Japanese are changing, I think. But it is, I think, very gradual, I think.
Well, that's, that's Japan's choice, and I think that's fine.
Yes.
There are actually some arguments to be made that that's the right way.
Yeah.
And there are some European countries like Norway that does it exactly the same way. So this has to be done slowly so that integration is even possible. Mm-hmm. So we have a number of questions that are coming in on education. And let me try to, there are at least 10. So let me try whether I can put them together. One thing is Robbie, who always has these numbers, and he says that McKinsey estimates that the DX or AI will destroy 16 million jobs, but create 11 million, right? And so, so it's all good. If we can somehow funnel the labor or re-educate labor from one to the other. Jill has a number of questions on high school curriculum, and this goes back to the women. Then there's also education in general in Japan, which is very regimented, of course, as we know, and also on the women. But I'm going to come back to the immigrants soon. On the women, that a lot of parents still and teachers teach girls to be obedient and that sort of thing. And then on the education side, also on the immigrants, are they integrated through schooling? My understanding is that kids of immigrants have to learn Japanese, which is a great thing. I think, you know, we could argue, but I think why not? And does that help immigration? Is there a Japanese experience there?
You mean that immigration, the child of the immigration is that education is very important issues?
Yes, just as important as girls. I would say that I mean, education is important for everybody, right? So and then you can actually top that off and say it's also important for the fritas. It's important for you know, for the immigrants that come at a young as students, right?
Yeah.
So does the committee think about investment in jinsai, talent, and this whole education reform? We're rethinking what the educational goals even should be.
Okay. Yes, we emphasize that education is very, very important for the future of Japan's future, and it is. We said that the productivity is not only the productivity, but value-added productivity is very important. And as we think that the DX is just a little bit very efficient, cost to efficiency, but you know that the value-added you know, goods or value-added services are very important for our future. And in this field, that you know, the skills or ability of the people is very, very important. So that regarding such improvement of human capital, the interim report point out that education, not only the child education, but also the current education is very, very important. And the movement of digitalization is accelerating in recent years. It will be necessary to prepare an environment where not only the students, but working people can learn and you know, to run not only as a company, but also as a society. And as for the immigrants, we think that inclusive education is very, very important. And it is also pointed out that the non-regular employees are not particularly trendy. It's a big problem in Japan. And looking at the annual income of non-regular employees, it is said that the wall is 3 million yen. And some people cannot exceed 3 million yen for the rest of their lives. So I think it is necessary to support people, not only the immigrants, but also the non-regular employees who want to change their status. So they just to stay the non-regular employees willingly to start over and run again. So not only the education of the primary or high school education, but also the current education is totally important, and to support all the people in Japan to contribute to the not only the society, but also to enjoy the happy life.
So what's interesting is that this is a really exciting moment in a way, right? Because just at this point, we have the young people, as you showed the survey, wanting to have a real work-life balance. there are more young people that are willing to change jobs or actually expect to change jobs very soon. Once lifetime employment is no longer the central mode of employment, it becomes less and less possible for large companies to train their employees because it would be non-economical. They would train the employees and then the employee goes to another company. So no company in their right mind would want to train their employees. So the education system has a particularly interesting moment right now, because one could see a new type of schooling and education in maybe even in an apprenticeship setting, or business schools or computer science schools or AI schools or whatever that the thing would be, and have a educational system take over some of the functions of the previous employee education within the company, the on-the-job training, right?
Yes.
So that would be a good moment. So there's we have so many topics, but I have a great question from Kyle, which goes back to this work-life balance about relocation policies. And there's a recent article in the news that the government is thinking about using this COVID moment to have people stay in the regions, right? So why don't you live at Lake Biwa, and enjoy kayaking during your lunch break while you're working hard? And that could also, of course, become part of the whole Shiho Sose regional revitalization policy. Can you talk a little bit more about what and then while we're there, the regions have all kinds of other challenges, like your favorite problem, I would say, topic was the regional banks.
Regional banks, yes.
Regions and the regional banks.
Yes. Yeah, it's just revitalize regional bank, regional areas under COVID-19, because the young people are just, as I said, that changing the eyes to the rural areas from the health consciousness, or the that eco is very important, and do not want to commute in the very crowded trains more. So this is a chance. But as you said, that the regional banks is a very difficult situation now in Japan. The environment has been very harsh due to the persistent low interest rates and also declining population, and the environment is getting worse in COVID-19. But as the post-pandemic restructuring of local business will require the support of regional banks. So the government began to relax the restrictions of the scope of business for banks, and regional banks must strengthen their management base, including through mergers. So not only the regional banks, but also the regional universities, companies, and regional, CEO or mature digital also make an ecosystem to make the regional area make to these areas attractive, to think about more deeply and to act to the new normal regional areas.
So COVID brings this opportunity, right?
Yeah.
If companies could incentivize people, it's fine. If you want to live in the regions, say Shinkansen, it's only 2 hours away, right? It's 3 hours, whatever. So if you have to come in, you can. But go out there, live in the countryside. If that could be incentivized, would that not help then the regions? Because then there would be more restaurants and hotels and all kinds of things, and then you have a regional economy, and then that could sort of jumpstart this whole thing. So is the government thinking about, I think this is Kyle's question actually, so is the government thinking about jumpstarting that by encouraging companies to just say, look, you can work remotely, you don't have to be in the office?
Yes, I think the government think about the revitalization of regional areas to make this chance uh, more effective, like doing the 5G to make a 5G more useful to the areas of many areas, and to intensifies to live in the rural areas for people, and to move the headquarters of the companies to the each regional areas. So as you said, that online remote work or remote education is a very, very good tool for people or for companies to move from the urban areas to rural areas. So it's a chance, I think.
So our common friend Robbie has the final and most difficult question, which has to do with the budget. And so he has actually, there are many questions about the government debt and the government spending. So he points out that we've talked about things that are all very expensive. Education spending by the government in Japan is 3% of GDP, which is the lowest in the OECD. The share of STEM majors in colleges have fallen, so there's something wrong there. Then the society is aging and shrinking. What he wonders, can the government do to offer welfare to the aging people? Is there what's the government or the budget debt implication of social security increases? And then there's of course the COVID costs, right? Because I think this is something that people don't want to talk about quite yet, but the government handouts and the tax breaks and the measures to keep businesses in business are all very expensive. So I hope this does not end our conversation on a negative note, but I would like to invite you to talk a little bit about the Zaisei Mondai, right? The fiscal challenges that are underlying a lot of these topics.
Yeah, I think fiscal consolidation is very important in the future. And while it is important to respond to the immediate crisis by the mobilizing public funds through issuance government bonds, looking towards the future, the government will need to pursue fiscal consolidation efforts for sustainable growth. According to the government's long-term economic and fiscal outlook released in April, primary balance will be in equilibrium in 2030s, but the assumption is very optimistic. And I think that we have to think about the new tax mix in the new era after COVID-19, and wide spending is very, very important in the future.
So I think Robbie asks the question slightly differently, which is something's got to give, right? So if you want to change the education system, or you want to incentivize women to, be more generous and, enable and possible and diversify, then those are all really great goals. Mm-hmm. At the same time, the state is heavily making monies available for innovation. Then there is R&D, and we don't want to fall behind. And so the concern is something has got to give. So if there's more spending on these new things like revamping the education system, where can spending be cut? Right. So this is the old problem, and I'm not sure you have an answer to that. But is that something that needs to be discussed as well?
Yeah, I think so. So especially the social security expenditure will balloon after 2022 because you know that baby boomers reach the age of 75 and older. So how to, how to the social security expenditure will be efficient is a very, very big issues for our future, I think.
Well, we can't solve all the problems in 1 hour, unfortunately. Yes. So, and this is always a sad part of this moment where the hour is over and we have to say goodbye. I would like to thank the audience for terrific questions, and there were more than we could answer. So I will review them later and pass them on as well. And thank you everybody for joining us today. And I hope you will be back with us next week when we look at Japan through the transnational lens with Shalgaran. Until then, please stay safe, be very careful. It's not so great out there right now, so stay home, be good, practice Jishuku, and come on back next week. Until then, take good care.